Underneath the hood of the Jeep Compass, there is only a single engine choice that's available, and that's this 2-liter turbocharged inline 4 that Jeep introduced a couple years ago. Power-wise, this pushes out 200 horsepower and 221 pound-feet of torque, which puts it pretty much neck and neck with the Ford Bronco Sport, if you're doing comparables right now. But it's a nice and simple design here. You can easily change your oil. There's a little engine cover, easy access to the battery, and topping up all of your fluids. You just want to make sure that you take care of your ride, bring it in for regularly scheduled maintenance, at least do regular oil changes to make sure that this car treats you right. The front end style of the Jeep Compass is nice and simple. You've got the Jeep badge with that Jeep-esque grille as well. And then lower part of the bumper also has a nice honeycomb design too. You're gonna find LED headlamps inside of the ride, and then a lot of optional technology as well. So you're gonna find the option for a front-facing camera. The front-facing camera is extremely useful if your plan is to go off-road. So that front-facing camera will give you a nice 360 view. But if you're going on trails, it's really useful to see what's going on around you. But if you're not trail riding, it doesn't matter. You can save yourself thousands of dollars looking at this trim level instead. In some trims, you're also going to find the option for some tow hooks in the front, which the Sport trim and most trims won't have. Pricing for the Jeep Compass in Canada starts at around $35,000 versus $27,500 down in the US, and that's going to go up depending on the trim level that you've chosen and the packages that you've added on and whether or not you've got some shrewd negotiating skills. But there's no denying that you get pretty good value inside of the Jeep Compass when you look at the lower trim levels of the ride. This one is in the diamond black crystal pearl, and while I do like the color, one thing that I'd recommend, especially with darker colors, is get your car ceramic coated. It might cost you a couple $100 up front, but it's going to protect the paint. The other option is to look at a paint protection film instead, but I think ceramic coating would be the way to go. One thing that Jeep changed out a couple of years ago was switching the Compass out to strictly be available 4x4. It was front-wheel drive standard before, but I think the 4x4 system is such a better choice, especially if you live in northern states or in Canada like me, because we get snow a couple months out of the year, and having 4x4 in the wintertime is amazing. And this car has a 4-wheel drive lock as well, which means that you can lock out the 4x4 system to give you better traction for those snowy, slippery conditions. Wheel sizes are all over the place, so you're 16, 17, 18, or 19-inch wheels with varying styles depending on which trim level of the vehicle that you've gone for. I am personally a bigger fan of darker wheels, so the base trim is just going to have this basic silver painted, but you could always hydro dip them instead or just go aftermarket to get something that matches your style. One thing that I do like is that little center cap in the middle of the wheel. It's kind of neat. And then suspension-wise, you've got a few different options, but when you look at the off-road models, specifically the Trailhawk, that's going to give you off-road tuned suspension. So if your plan is to go off-road inside of your Compass, like that's what you're getting it for, light trails and things like that, you might want to look at one of those higher trims instead of the entry level. The Jeep Compass is not a big vehicle by any stretch. I'm 6 feet tall and I am towering over this car. You do have the option for roof rack rails and crossbars if you need them. And then getting inside, straightforward. So 6 feet tall, easily get into the first row. Second row is equally as easy to get in and out of. And one nice thing, there are assist handles across all 4 doors if you need them. The side view mirrors inside of the Jeep Compass are manual folding. They are also heated, and there's the option for the blind spot monitoring system. So if somebody's entered the blind spot, it'll highlight there to let you know. Hopping inside, nice and simple here. You've got basic controls for your side view mirrors, for your windows as well. And then there's this nice cloth highlight along the door. And honestly, so much nicer when you're resting your arms. You're gonna find some cup holders there with a speaker, that same highlight with some basic controls for your lights, along with a dimmer switch, manual telescoping steering wheel inside the ride. And then this, since it's the sport trim, is just a regular cloth seat, and it's also a manual adjust. So manual up and down, adjust the backrest, and slide the seat forwards or backwards. There is the option for a power seat inside of the ride. Taking a peek at the steering wheel as well as the cluster screen inside of the Jeep Compass. Now this is the sport trim, so it's the entry-level model. So you're going to find a few different types of cluster screens that are available. So first thing I'm going to point out is that the steering wheel inside of the ride is going to be manual telescoping, so just bound by your left knee. There's a release there to go in, out, up and down to find that perfect position. Once you do, click it in order to lock it back into place. Some trim levels of the Jeep Compass are going to have a heated steering wheel. This one unfortunately doesn't, but if yours did, you'd have the option of turning it on right inside of the infotainment system there. There are also some buttons behind the steering wheel too, which are kind of neat. So the ones along the left-hand side, you can see there, it's moving us in between different stations. So that's essentially going to be a seek button. There's a button in the very middle there as well. And then as you can see there, that's jumping us through all of our presets that are along the bottom of the screen. Along the right-hand side, there's also a volume rocker, so you can adjust your volume there. And then in the very middle, you can also change out between all of your available sources, whether that's AM, FM, SiriusXM, whatever the case may be. I love that you've got the buttons there. It's not like the volume rocker is that far away, it's just down the middle here, but not having to take your hands off the steering wheel is pretty cool. Then you've got so many different sticks and switches and buttons. So along the left-hand side is your basic blinker. You can flash your high beams out easily as well, but you can't permanently lock them out when you're in the auto mode. So there's a switch down by your left knee, and you've got 3 different light modes that are available. So in order to turn them on, you just have to go into the second mode. So middle mode there, which is your headlamp mode. And then you can push away to turn your high beams on, pull towards you to turn them off, or flash them as necessary. But you're going to be in the auto mode the majority of the time. Stick along the right-hand side, you can go up in order to be able to just go one wipe for the wipers. Then you can adjust out to different levels using the stick there, the rocker there. You've also got the flexibility of using the middle one in order to adjust your rear wiper. You're going to pull towards you for the front wiper fluid. You're going to push away to get the rear wiper fluid going instead. And then there are so many different buttons and switches. So this one is just the regular cruise control. So there's no adaptive in this trim, but adaptive cruise is available as an option. And you'd have some additional switches for distance indicator as well. But with this one, regular cruise control, you turn it on, you set your speed, you increase, decrease 1 kilometer, 1 mile per hour at a time. You can hit the brake to pause, you can hit cancel to pause, and then you can hit resume in order to resume your previously set speed. And then along the left-hand side, you've got the option of either answering or hanging up on a phone call. If your phone was hooked up through, if your phone was hooked up, so whether that's iPhones or Androids, you could also push the button here to activate your assistant instead. And then you've got this little rocker pad in order to adjust out what's going on inside of the cluster screen. So if we look, you've got your traditional tachometer off to the left-hand side, speedometer off to the right, and then you can see a few other things. So you've got a few different lane keeping systems and things like that that are available. So you can toggle that on or off. There is a button right there down the screen in order to turn the lane keeping system on or off. There's also a few other systems that you can toggle on or off as well, so the auto start stop system and a few others. Now, one thing that you might see sometimes is that if you don't have the setting enabled, so it's going to be your safety driver assistance settings, your emergency braking, and that's going to be this guy. So if you ever see that message, it's just that you've got your forward collision warning turned off, or you've got it set to only a warning. So in order to get rid of that message completely, you do have to make sure that you've got warning and active braking enabled. Otherwise, that message is going to stay there. But you've got your current temperature along the side there. You've also got your current vehicle speed, your total odometer. On this side, you've also got your current fuel level. And then you've got your, like I said, speedometer, and then whether or not you've got your driver's seat seatbelt plugged in or not. And then you can use the rocker pad along the left-hand side in order to move between a series of different screens. So you can change out to either miles or kilometers per hour this way very simply. And then you can go between a bunch of different info here. So you've got your current tire pressure, which you can adjust out through the infotainment system, moving across into your coolant temperature, transmission, oil temps, and battery voltage. Driver assistance settings, so if different things were turned on, turned off, etc., you'd have those the ones show up as well. You've got your current fuel economy. If you wanted to reset, you're just going to push and hold that OK button, and that just resets it back to 0 instead. You've got 2 different trip counters that are available, so A versus B, and same idea, just push and hold OK in order to reset it back out to 0. You've got your start-stop system there, and the start-stop system, there is a button just underneath the infotainment system that you can use in order to turn it off. But when you turn the vehicle off and then back on again, that's going to come back on regardless. There you've got your audio, so whether you're an AM, FM, or SiriusXM, that's going to show up. From here, back and down into messages, so if you had any messages available, it would show up, and then you've got the flexibility of adjusting the screen a tiny little bit. So there's not much flexibility here, but if you look, you'll see the highlights jumping around. So you can adjust a few things out here. So upper right, you can have your ignition. So whether that's ready to go, if you want your time, your date, outside temp. Actually, I think outside temp would probably make the most sense there. Date and time is kind of useful. Now I'm gonna go outside temp. You can just have it as the defaults instead. Oh, hold on, did I not save that? Yeah, I definitely didn't save it. So rather than pushing back, what we're gonna do, hit the OK button instead. There we go, settings saved. And then you can go upper left instead. So do you want nothing showing up? Do you want your outside temperature, date, time, etc.? What would we want there? Maybe the time? I think that would probably make sense. And so you can kind of customize the screen a little bit. Like what do you want showing up there? You've got a little bit of flexibility, which is kind of nice. It would be nice to have a little bit more, but it's the same thing even with the larger cluster screen. You don't have a ton. Actually, it's kind of neat. Yeah, so you don't have a ton of flexibility. You've got a bit, which is kind of useful, but you can at least adjust the layout a tiny little bit if you wanted to. And then you can jump in to go to some different vehicle settings. So this one here, because it's the entry-level trim, not many options. So hill start assist, do you want that on versus off instead? It's as crazy as it gets inside of that screen. And then back to your digital speedometer there instead. And then seat-wise, so mentioned, so this is the sport version of the vehicle, which means you're looking at just regular cloth seats. There is leather seating available as you move up to higher trim levels, but I would say overall, the seat comfort is actually surprisingly nice. And it's funny, like I've got the heated seats on right now as well. It feels so good, but I would say the seat overall is fairly comfortable here. And with the seat as far down as it's gonna go, with me sitting fully upright, I've got 4 roughly inches of headspace, which I think is pretty respectable. There is the option for a panoramic sunroof inside of the ride, which this one doesn't have. But pretty good space inside of this vehicle otherwise though. Taking a peek at the infotainment system inside of the Jeep Compass. This is the smaller 8.4 inch version. There is a larger 10.1 inch instead. The functionality between them is pretty much identical, but the larger 10.1 inch has the option for factory navigation, whereas this one doesn't. But let's dive in. I'll show you everything that you need to know. The first thing, along the very top, you have a little button there that you can push in order to adjust the climate, and then you can also toggle on the driver's heated seat if you'd like to. And then if you had ventilated seats in yours, if you had a heated steering wheel, etc., you'd have additional options there. If your audio is muted, you'd also be able to see whether or not the audio is muted there. And there's a button just down the middle in order to be able to mute audio. So when it's muted versus unmuted, there's the volume rocker down the middle, but you can also push that button in order to turn the screen off. But that fully turns the screen off, gets rid of the functionality there. You can also toggle the screen off along the bottom right-hand side as well. So you've essentially put it into a little sleep mode instead. Then you've got your time along the very top, and you can swipe down in order to get to a quick launch tray. You can hit the little gear icon there as well if you wanted to be able to adjust your clock settings. You've got your outside temperature, your driver profile there as well. So a big benefit there is that it's going to remember all of this information. So if you've customized your screen, if you've done things like hooked your phone up over Bluetooth, if you have factory navigation in yours, it's going to remember your previously saved addresses and things like that. So if you've got multiple people driving the vehicle, you absolutely want to add in an additional user profile for however many people are going to be driving the vehicle. But it is useful, and then you can easily switch between all of your profiles there. And then you can also do things like change out your name, edit your custom avatar there as well if you'd like to. Kind of neat. You can change out all of your different preferences. You can delete the profile from the vehicle, etc. So again, very useful if you've got multiple people driving, if there are notifications available in the vehicle, and then you've got your passenger side control there too. You can jump back home. Then there are a series of other options here. But if you hit this My Pages button, you could add in additional pages if you'd like to. So watch this. We've now added in an additional widget. So if you wanted it to be maybe something quick for your seats, and then for your comfort settings, you'd have the flexibility of being able to adjust this out. So what it's doing is it's loading all of these different settings. You can add in additional pages as well, and same idea. You can add in different widgets. Do you want it to be phone, custom shortcuts, and things like that? So you've got the flexibility to customize the screen a tiny little bit if you wanted to, which is kind of nice. So if you don't like the look, the layout, whatever the case may be, you've got the flexibility to adjust it. You've got your basic home screen here, and that's going to be this basic layout. Next up is going to be media. Along top of media, you've got sources. So whether that's FM, AM radio, SiriusXM, phone, if you had a USB stick with MP3s, that would show up. And then you've also got the flexibility of being able to do a drag and drop. So let's say if you love listening to AM radio instead of FM, you can do that. So you're just dragging and dropping, replacing any of these four. So if you wanted to customize the layout of this quick launch tray, you'd have the flexibility to be able to do it, and that locks into place on different screens. I've got USB selected here, but if you had AM, FM, or SiriusXM, etc. set up, you could see it there. You can easily tune to stations if you want to, and then just button push in order to tune. And then you could look at all presets, but if you wanted to save a preset, once you've tuned to the station, you're just going to push and hold. You heard that chime in order to save, and it's a mix of AM, FM, or SiriusXM. You can hit all presets to see all of the available preset pages, and you can add in a boatload of additional preset pages as well. So it's just going to be a matter of personal preference. How many stations do you tend to listen to with a mix of AM, FM, or SiriusXM? You can tune to different stations this way if you'd like to. You can hop in here to SiriusXM. Same idea with options for notifications for either the artist or the song. So if Bobby Brown plays on any SiriusXM station or My Prerogative plays on any station, you can get a notification giving you a heads up that that song is now playing. You've also got basic tuning options here too. So if you wanted to tune to a station, you could change out stations this way as well. So you've got different options for SiriusXM. You can browse for audio too. So you can see there, because I'm on SiriusXM, but that's different if we go to FM instead. So what it's doing is it's scanning for all available stations. So if you're new to an area, you're not sure what stations are available, you can do a basic scan, and it's going to scan in to let you know what radio stations are currently available. Takes a second to do, and then you've got all of your audio settings. Do you want it focused on the driver, people in the back seat, first row, etc.? You've got that flexibility. You can kind of do a finer tune this way, but I think doing the drag and drop makes the most sense. And then you can see there, where do you want the audio to sit? You've got the equalizer with your bass, middle, and treble, which are extremely high. So bass, you really want to go like 4 points. Mid-range is actually pretty good there. Treble, up like maybe a point or two, is going to give you pretty good audio in this ride. So what I'd recommend is once you get the vehicle, play one of your favorite songs and then adjust these out until it sounds perfect for you. You can adjust your volume there for speed compensated. So what that means is as you go faster or slower, it's automatically going to raise or lower the volume for you. Loudness, nothing exciting there. Autoplay, USB audio is going to automatically play when you turn the vehicle on. Do you want the radio to turn off when you open up the door, or do you want it to stay on for a certain amount of time? You can adjust individual volumes for different things. So if you want your media volume set to something different, do you want your phone volume a little bit lower? Voice recognition and things like that. Then you've got some basics for SiriusXM as well. But that's using media inside of the ride. It's extremely straightforward to do. I like that you've got all of your different browse options, but like I said, easily tuning to options this way. And then on the steering wheel, you've also got the flexibility of pushing up and down this way, so on the left pad, in order to be able to change the station out. You can also push the button in the middle there if you wanted to change between all of your presets. So that's on the left-hand side. And then along the right-hand side, You can also use these buttons in order to be able to adjust your volume. And then you can also change out the source that you're listening to as well. So whether that's AM, FM, USB audio, whatever the case may be. And that's going to be based off of whatever audio sources you have set up here. So it's going to jump us between those 4 different options. Next up is going to be comfort settings. So you've got a series of different settings here, the majority of which you can control down the middle. So you can adjust out what's going on with your climate. Do you want your max or rear windshield defroster going? You've got AC, your fan control, and your mode. So you want to go into your windshield face or feet. But as you adjust it, you can see it going through and changing what's going on with the screen too, which is kind of nice. So you can adjust things out different ways, just depending on what you're a bigger fan of. Then it just gives you finer control when you're inside of the screen here, adjusting your fan speed out, things like that, turning on your heated seats. So you'll see a lot of these things duplicated in a few different spots. And then next up is adding in a phone. So as of right now, no phones are connected. So let's go ahead and we're going to start off on the iPhone side of things. Oh, from here, all we're going to do is we've got uConnect showing up there. So just going to click on uConnect. Pin numbers match up, so we're going to pair. And yes. Do you want your contacts and favorites to sync up? This is not my car, so I'm definitely saying no to that one. And a few seconds in, 3, 2, 1, we are fully connected. And one nice thing, so you can stop here if you just wanted to be hooked up on your phone. And what that's going to do is let you stream audio, make phone calls, and things like that. But you've also got wireless Apple CarPlay inside of the ride. It is backwards compatible though, so if you'd prefer to use a wired connection, you could, but let's go ahead and let's enable Apple CarPlay. There we go, a few seconds in, and look at that. So it's not as nice as it looks on the 10.1 inch screen, but it's still pretty cool that you've got this available. So you've got your current time, connection, and battery level, which map was open last, which audio application was open last, which miscellaneous application was open last. And then you can also go to your little icon view or to this little split screen instead. So that's I'd say more of your home screen for CarPlay, but it's straightforward using it. You've got Apple Maps, Google Maps, and Waze. You can move around with your finger, but there's no pinch to zoom capabilities inside of any map application. My favorite map application to use is going to be Waze. And the big reason why, it's a user-friendly application. So is Google Maps and Apple Maps. But as people are driving, if there are red light cameras, they're good to notify you. You can also see if there are police pulling people over. So there are speed traps and things like that. People are pretty good at marking that off. And you can mark things off yourself. So if there's construction going on, or if you notice that there's a speed trap set up and things like that, you've got that flexibility where you can set that up too. So I'm a bigger fan of using Waze, but that's going to come down to a matter of preference. One thing to point out is that Apple CarPlay, you can't watch videos on it. So it's strictly going to be audio. So Hoopla is a library app, Live One's a radio app. You can listen to YouTube music and things like that as well. You just can't watch video through the screen. You can jump back to the home screen here, but if you jump out of CarPlay at all, along the very bottom, you can just button push in order to jump back into CarPlay that way. And then you've got the flexibility of customizing the layout here. So on your phone, you're going to go to your settings, jump into General, and then into CarPlay, and then you've got uConnect. You can turn it off, you can customize or forget. But if you're running into problems, like let's say if CarPlay is not even connecting, check down in the description of this video. I've put together a little walkthrough with some common CarPlay fixes that you can try. But what we want to do here is customize. You're going to drag the little hamburger icon in order to set up the icon view that you'd like. So if you wanted to customize the layout, you could. Anything with a minus next to it, you can actually remove it from the screen as well if you didn't want it. And then it saves it along the bottom of the phone. So if you wanted to add them back in, you can easily do that. But if you've played around with the layout too much and you don't like what you've done, on your phone you can hit reset, in order to bring you back to the factory default layout there instead. You can hit the CarPlay button there in order to launch into your phone manager or the device manager. If we go to the device manager, you can see that I'm hooked up over CarPlay. So if you wanted to disconnect from CarPlay and just use your phone for phone calls, you've got that flexibility instead. So I know that's a little bit of info there, but that's how you set up Apple devices inside of the Jeep Compass. Setting up an Android device is the exact same process. So let's say if you weren't on this screen, what you do is hop into your phone. I'm connected to the iPhone right now, so all we want to do is just add in a new device. And then on the Android, we're just looking for uConnect. There we go. Pin numbers match up, so we're going to hit OK. Oh, and then yes, on the screen, can't forget that. Allow access to contacts and messages. This is not my car, so I'm saying no to that one. But again, if this is yours, you could set it up if you'd like. And then you've also got wireless Android Auto, but same idea, backwards compatible. So if you wanted to use wireless, you could. If you wanted to go wired, you've got that flexibility instead. And it's going to take just a second here. And 3, 2, and we are fully connected. So you've got your little split screen here to start. You've got your icon view. So if you wanted to go down icon view, back to your home screen view, you've got your assistant that way as well. You've got Google Maps here too. But one cool thing, when you hit the Google Maps button and it gives you full screen with full pinch to zoom capabilities. And that's one thing that I love about Google Maps or Android Auto in general is that it's full screen. Similar to what we saw on the iPhone side of things, you've got route options. So you can avoid different things on the route as well if you'd like to. There's a quick launch tray along the very bottom, along with your current battery level, connection level, and time as well. Now, on the icon side of things, if you've got Waze installed on your Android device, but Waze is not showing up, check down in the description of this video. I've put together a little walkthrough explaining how you can get Waze onto your Android device if it's not working. It's a pretty straightforward process. And then on your phone, you've got the option of customizing some things. So you're going to search for Android Auto, and you're going to go into Android Auto settings. And when you do that, you're just going to customize your launcher, and then you can see all of the icons here. Anything with a check mark next to it, you can remove it. You can add things in as well if you'd like to. And then from here, you can also hit the hamburger icon if you wanted to adjust things out. So if you wanted to drag and drop, you could. But it's not dynamic the same way it was on the iPhone side of things. So any changes that you want to have it come into effect, all you need to do is go into your device manager. You're going to disconnect from Android Auto. You're going to reconnect to Android Auto. There we go, and Android Auto, let's launch in and go to your icon view. And the changes that we've made have now come into effect. So it's that easy customizing the screen. And then if you go back into your device manager, you've got both phones. So you can either be connected to Android Auto or Apple CarPlay, not both. But one cool thing that you could do is you can be hooked up to one phone for phone calls, and then you can also do one phone for media. You can kind of do a little mix and match here, which is kind of nice. You can hit the little gear icon here to make it a favorite device if you want to. You could enter Do Not Disturb mode, charging only modes, enable, disable Android Auto, or you can fully delete the devices instead. Phone's deleted. Same idea on the iPhone side of things, and then you just go delete and yes. And 3, 2, 1, we have now fully disconnected both phones from the vehicle. And it's that easy setting up Android and iPhone devices inside of the Jeep Compass. And from here, hopping into vehicle. You've got a series of different controls and then settings as well. So controls, you'd have a boatload of other options if you were in one of the higher trim levels. I love how clear that backup camera is inside of this ride. You can hit the little plus button there in order to zoom in for a hitch view, turn the screen off, button press to turn it back on, with some additional settings with a bunch of different options. So this is for your specific profile. You can change out your language. So do you want to be in either English, French, or Spanish? You can change out your display mode to either auto or manual. So with an auto mode, the vehicle is going to determine how bright the screen is just based off of how bright it is outside. And you'll notice there, we've also got the option of adjusting for daytime, nighttime mode, whatever the case may be. You can set a theme, very subtle changes. Hold on, let's see if you can even notice. Yeah, so you can see the background there slightly changes out. So you've got that available. You can't really customize it outside of that. You've also got your measurement units. So you'd be able to change out between either kilometers or miles instead. Now, inside of this version of the Compass, it is going to be a traditional tachometer speedometer, but you've got your digital speed in the middle. So you've got the flexibility of adjusting that digital speed out one way or the other. You can change out your fuel consumption levels as well. So if you're going cross-border, change out your tire pressure, and then also adjust out whether you're in Celsius or Fahrenheit instead. There's a beep that we're getting here. So if you wanted to get rid of that beep, you could. And you can change out your format. Do you want to be in 12 versus 24-hour mode? There's radio delays. Do you want your radio to turn off when you open up the door? You can adjust some individual settings for your individual profile, not for the general vehicle. So these are all for your individual profile. So you'll notice a few things get duplicated across the board. So if you wanted to customize the profile for yourself, you could, and then people could do that for individual profiles as well, depending on who you've connected inside of your profile screen here instead. But changing out the display mode gives us most of those same options. Drowsy driver alert, if you start to veer over into another lane too many times without signaling, eventually it's going to tell you that you should probably take a break. And then you've got some lane management options. So this is kind of a neat one. So if you start to veer over into another lane without signaling, you'll get a little bit of a steering wheel vibration, almost like you're running over rumble pavement. You can do steering assist, where it's actually going to nudge you back into your lane, or you can get both. So a little steering wheel vibration, and then it's also going to nudge you back into your lane as well. There's lane warnings, the vibration strength. So that's the steering wheel vibration that you get there. What level do you want it to be at? And then the steering assist strength, so nudging you back into your lane. What's the strength there as well? You can adjust your date and time here too. So 12 versus 24-hour mode, AM, PM. You can set your date there as well. And let's see, phone Bluetooth settings. You've got your device manager, which we saw earlier. Hopping back, you can enter a do not disturb mode. Your camera, the backup delay. So if you've got your rear view camera going, you start to drive, so you switch yourself into drive. It's going to show that rear camera for a few seconds before you start driving. And then you've also got your guidelines here. So I definitely recommend the guidelines, because those are the guidelines there, and they're dynamic. So as you go to rotate the steering wheel, you'll see which direction you're actually going. Mirrors and wipers, nothing exciting there. Lights, let's see, headlight delay. So when you go to lock the vehicle, how long do the lamps stay on for before they turn off? Options for brake. Do you want the parking brake to automatically come on when you turn the vehicle off, yay or nay? Doors and locks, let's see, when you go to lock the door, do you want the lights to flash and let you know? Do you want a horn? When you go to unlock the doors, does just the driver's door become unlocked, or is it all doors that become unlocked? Seats and comfort. Do you want the driver heated seat to come on automatically when you start the vehicle up, yay or nay? And then if you had other options inside of your compass, you'd see some different options there too. Headlight, so same idea, when you go to lock the vehicle, when do you want your radio to turn off? So just right away or within 20 minutes. Audio, which we've already seen these options. Basics for notifications, nothing exciting there. SiriusXM info, software updates, system information. Nothing exciting. And then the reset, you've got a few different options that are available here. So you can restore all of your apps, reset everything back to the factory default layouts instead. You could reset passwords and things like that. But if the screen's giving you problems, you could do a full factory reset. But one of the easier things to do would just be to do a soft reboot instead. So before I show you the soft reboot, you've also got this last one, which is an app tray. And that's going to be a series of available apps inside of the ride. So it's essentially all of the settings that we've already seen. They're just laid out slightly differently instead. And then depending on the trim level of the ride that you're in, you might see that there are some other options that are available. But to do the soft reboot inside of the screen, what you're going to do, you've got a series of buttons down the middle here. You've got your volume power button. You're just going to push and hold that for about 10 seconds or so 5 to 10 seconds, and you'll notice that the screen goes blank. And then what it's doing is it's entered a soft reboot cycle instead. So you can see there, screen is off after about 10 seconds, and it's launching up. So if Apple CarPlay, Android Auto aren't working, if the screen's giving you problems, connectivity issues and things like that, you definitely want to try a soft reboot first by pushing and holding that button for about 10 seconds or so. It's going to load up, and then you're set to go. There are a few different speaker choices that you're going to find inside of the ride. So this one is a 6-speaker setup. And honestly, the overall audio quality, I would say, is pretty good. I think it's going to be acceptable for most people. Is it the best possible audio that you can get inside of the ride? No. But if you're just looking for good audio, I would say, again, that's going to be good enough for most. As you get into the higher trims, better quality audio. But again, if you don't really care about that extra stuff, you can save yourself a bunch of cash going this way instead. You've got a lot of other things inside of the screen as well. So different options for the display. There's an auto start stop system, traction control, lane keeping system, and basic climate control settings. I love that there's a regular shifter inside of this ride. And while there's no dedicated sport mode, because you've got sand, mud, snow, and an auto mode, there is the option for, look at that, manual mode. So you're essentially utilizing the 8-speed automatic transmission instead. But I do think that the shifter inside of the ride nice and comfortable in the hand. And then even looking at basics like the backup camera quality is actually pretty solid inside of this car as well. You've got an electronic parking brake, some storage high with your cup holders down low, that four-wheel drive lock. There's also an armrest. It's got a bit of storage in there, nothing crazy. Same highlight that you saw along the doors there. And again, I think that this is so much nicer than having this material, more comfortable on the arm if you're resting it there. Glove box is non-lockable. There's a good amount of space. Up overhead, you've got basic controls for your cabin lights. A dimming rearview mirror is an option in the higher trims, but it's manual inside of this lower trim. And then I mentioned you'd have the option for a panoramic roof in the higher trim levels of the ride. There's a ticket receipt holder on the outside and the inside. And then there's also, a little light there on top of that. This, it even stretches out to block all of the sun that might be hitting your face. I like that there's an assist handle there, but the interior here, nice and simple. The second row has the same highlight along the door, basic bottle storage down low. Then higher trims would have the option for second row heated seats, but this trim level doesn't. But with the driver's seat set up for myself being 6 feet tall, inside of the second row, I've got a good amount of knee space, foot space, and head space. A little tight, like an inch roughly of space there. So not a ton of space, but I can still fit back here, which is a win in my books for sure. Basics back here, you've got pockets behind both the passenger and the driver's side. Basic vent controls, there's a USB power point, and then a 12-volt power point down low too. Up overhead, there's a handle hook, and a light on the passenger side and on the driver's side too. Behind the seat, you're gonna find some cup holders built in. There are anchor points down low, tether points in behind the seats if you need them as well. There is a tiny little hump in the middle seat there, so sitting here, it's not gonna be the most comfortable seat. I've actually got a bit more headspace though, which is kind of nice, like maybe half an inch. Yeah, about half an inch more of headspace inside of the middle seat compared to the others. But the middle seat, like every manufacturer, is not overly comfortable by any stretch. So getting 3 full-size adults that are my size back here would be tight. But if you've got shorter friends, family members, whatever the case may be, they won't have an issue back here at all. The rear end styling of the Compass is unchanged from the 24 to the 2025 model. LED tail lamps with a backup camera and a rear wiper are going to be there. You will find some different technology in the higher trims of the Compass as well. So things like the reverse park sensing system and a power tailgate would be there as an option, but it's not available in this sport trim. You can tow inside of the Compass as well. Regardless of the trim, you're looking at maximum 2,000-pound towing capacity. So small boats, trailers, bike rack carriers, things like that, you won't have an issue inside of this ride. So I did mention, powered tailgate is available inside of this thing, but inside of the sport trim, it's just a manual instead. So there's just a button there that you're gonna push in order to raise it up. I'm a fan of power tailgates, but doing it yourself isn't necessarily a bad thing. And I just kind of noticed there's like a Jeep style design right on the liftgate door there. Kind of cool. Squirrel. Looking at the features back here, there's not much. You've got lights off to the left and the right side, and then some storage pockets along both sides as well. You do have the option for a thermoplastic rubber tray from the factory. So if you wanted to protect the back end, you could, but otherwise it's just a carpeted liner. And lifting it up though, you've got a mini spare tire, which is incredibly useful because if you do end up going on a trail or you pop a tire, puncture a tire, whatever the case may be, you've at least got that spare. There is the option for roadside assistance as well, but the jack and all the necessary components are there if you need them. And then there's also some storage along the outside of that mini spare tire. Folding down the second row seats inside of the Compass can be done from the trunk, can also be easily done from the second row. But if you can reach it from the back here, up along the top, you're just gonna grab and push. And it's a 60-40 bench, so 60 on the driver, 40 on the passenger. And then one thing is that the seats are locked into place, so you can't slide them forwards or backwards. But the cargo measurements that we're looking at here, specifically behind the first row, are going from right where that liftgate would close to just in behind that little armrest between the first row seats. So if the driver's seat, passenger seat were forwards or backwards, you'd lose or gain a little bit of extra space. But there's a lot of space inside of this ride. Filling up fuel inside of the Compass is done just along the passenger side. It's an unlocked cover that has a capless system, but that capless system has anti-siphon technology built in. The vehicle also requires unleaded fuel, but one nice thing is that the minimum manufacturer's recommendation inside of the ride is just regular 87 gas. So regular fuel is all you need to use inside of this thing. You do get pretty good fuel economy inside of the Compass. It's ultimately going to depend on your own personal driving habits, because if you gun it, it's going to give you worse fuel economy overall. But if you granny drive it, you're going to get pretty good economy overall. So this one has the 2-liter turbocharged engine in it, which means you're looking at 200 horsepower and there you go, 221 pound-feet of torque. On highway speeds right now, I am actually incredibly surprised. The Jeep Compass is really, really quiet, like noticeably quiet. Nicely done. And for the price point that this is at, this is the entry-level trim. And that was everything you needed to know about the Jeep Compass. You can find all of the build details for this specific Jeep down in the description, along with links off to Jeep Canada, US, and the contact details for Pickering Jeep, who were nice enough to lend this to me for the afternoon to shoot the video. But if you found this video useful, give it a thumbs up, share it with someone if you think they might find it helpful, and until I see you next time, take care. It's an unlocked cover that also has a The Jeep Compass Sport is the entry-level trim level.